Is there friendship between a man and a woman? Or friendship in general? I began to doubt it very much after what I had to go through. The closest people of my childhood brazenly betrayed me and tried to convince me otherwise until the last moment. It hurt me a lot, and I got my revenge and hit the nail on the head. Hollis Thomas sat by the small pool in his backyard, observing his wife Tiffany and their closest friend frolicking in the waves of the Gulf of Mexico. In the past, as he watched them enjoy themselves in the surf, he would also take pride in their surroundings, reflecting on how they had realized their childhood dreams. They had escaped the harsh winters of their hometown in the cold north and were now living the dream in sunny Florida. However, on this particular day, he wasn't focused on their journey from their hometown to this paradise. Instead, as he watched the couple play, he felt a wave of upset wash over him as he recalled rumors that had circulated since high school, persisting to the present. He disregarded the pleasant setting and honed in on what was truly happening in the water and sand. Until recently, he could honestly say he loved both Tim and Tiff more than anyone else on earth. He had entrusted them with his life, his happiness, even his soul for years. They were almost inseparable. If one was unhappy, they all were. If one suffered, they all did. Now he realized that the trust and love he had once held for them were misplaced. Hollis, Tiff, and Tim's paths first crossed on the day of their first admission to high school, when they were assigned to the same class. They immediately found a common language, and Hollis and Tiff established a strong relationship that lasted through high school and college. Timothy, on the other hand, embodied the archetype of a laid-back beachgoer even before he had access to a real beach. Devoid of any semblance of ambition, he constantly sported surfers' clothes and spoke in the jargon of beach culture, seasoned with the jargon of bandits. Although Hollis had never witnessed Tim using illegal substances, he was well aware that he had bad habits. Despite his lack of drive, Tim had an innate charm that attracted women to him like a magnet, and his tanned appearance and pleasant speech made him irresistible. It seemed that he could effortlessly surprise almost any woman he paid attention to, demonstrating an unquenchable thirst for conquest. Until recently, Hollis believed that Tim was holding back his desires, especially with regard to his best friend's wife. However, recent events have shattered this illusion. 3 friends graduated from high school together and applied to colleges as a unit, focusing solely on institutions in Florida. Their primary criterion for selection was the college or university's location rather than its prestige or the qualifications they could attain there. Upon acceptance to the same college, they moved in together to embark on their higher education journey. However, Tim's college experience was short-lived as he flunked out after just 1 semester, concluding that college wasn't suited for him. He found solace near the beaches of Fort Myers, FL, living a day-to-day existence while frequently visiting his friends throughout their college years. During Hollis and Tiff's college tenure, Tim worked various part-time jobs in the vicinity of the beach. He found his niche working for a pool company, local beachside businesses, and a nearby beach rental shop. Strangely, he excelled in this environment, impressing customers with his laid-back surfer dude demeanor as he persuaded them to rent or purchase items. Hollis speculated that Tim's success stemmed from his ability to connect with tourists through his charming sales approach. Hollis himself was employed by the owner of the beach rental company, which also operated a small retail store and a larger equipment rental outlet. Tim primarily worked in the store, which specialized in selling used beach rental equipment, along with a range of beach essentials such as chairs, swimsuits, sunscreen, and beverages. Tiffany and Hollis both studied business in college, but with different focuses. Tiffany earned a degree in marketing, while Hollis pursued a double major in management information systems and business management. Upon graduating, they both quickly secured jobs. Hollis joined the equipment rental business where Tim worked, swiftly advancing to the position of store manager and becoming second in command to the owner. Meanwhile, Tiffany landed a job selling clothing at a beachside boutique and soon rose to the role of assistant manager. The trio worked in close proximity, often seeing each other daily. Hollis and Tim, being colleagues, frequently interacted throughout the day. Tim often mentioned to Hollis that he and Tiffany had lunch together, as their workplaces were nearby and they often spent breaks together. Despite rumors circulating about Tim and Tiffany, Hollis chose to disregard them, trusting in their long-standing friendship. Tiffany had previously dated Tim in their youth and determined he wasn't suitable husband material, ultimately marrying Hollis instead. Hollis saw no reason to be concerned given this history. Apart from his fondness for women and beach activities, Tim harbored a singular passion in his life: Mustang automobiles. Whenever the topic veered towards cars, he inevitably found himself in the midst of discussions about the Ford Mustang. Starting with his first car, every subsequent vehicle he owned was a Mustang. After saving up diligently, he eventually purchased his dream Mustang, a Shelby in ruby red metallic with black accents. When he wasn't enjoying beach outings or pursuing romantic interests, his spare moments were dedicated to caring for and customizing his beloved Mustang. Tiffany was the first to accompany him in his new car, and she frequently joined him on subsequent rides. Hollis reminisced about the good times spent with his two closest friends, whether it was road trips, camping, or simply hanging out. Tiffany was a constant presence in their lives, but she belonged to Tim. She insisted they were just friends, though it seemed she played a more significant role even back then. While she never admitted to being friends with benefits, it became apparent that was indeed the case then, and perhaps still is. Only recently did Hollis come face to face with her lack of respect and infidelity. It dawned on him that the rumors circulating over the years were indeed true. Hollis nearly regretted accepting the task of delivering another batch of rental scaffolding to a construction site when he discovered his betrayal that day. Feeling both bored and pressured by the urgent request from the renter, he volunteered for the delivery, unaware of what awaited him. If he hadn't taken on the task, he might have remained blissfully unaware for a while longer, never confirming the rumors to be true. As he recalled what he witnessed by the shore, a surge of anger washed over him once again, realizing his previous naivety. Everything suddenly became clear to him. The day his life took a downward spiral was beautiful. With business slow on a Tuesday, he chose to handle the scaffold delivery himself instead of asking the driver to work late. This decision saved on overtime and pleased a customer, appearing to be a win-win situation at the time. Little did he know, it would lead to his downfall. He drove back to the store on Beach Road, passing Tiffany's and Timothy's workplaces along the way. He walked past the small, almost dilapidated building where Tim worked, just in time to witness Tiffany and Tim standing at the entrance and kissing passionately. Tim's arms were wrapped around his wife, and they stood there for a long time before going inside. She was smiling and giggling. As soon as the door closed behind them, she initiated another prolonged kiss, this time clearly taking the initiative into her own hands. Tim quickly hung the closed for lunch sign on the door and followed Tiffany deeper into the building while she laughed and pulled him along. Hollis parked his new F-150 next to Tim's Mustang and hurried to the store, looking inside. The lights were off, the door was locked, and no one was in sight, indicating that they were either in the warehouse or had left through the warehouse door. Hollis moved to the back of the building and put a trash can under a tall, dirt-covered window. Climbing onto the trash can, he began to look into the room, catching snatches of conversations, but unable to decipher them. He hurriedly went down, put a couple of mattresses under the jar, then got up again. Now he could see the room better, and his world collapsed. Lady Tiffany cheated on him with his best friend. Hollis retrieved his phone from his pocket and snapped several pictures before stepping away from the garbage can and distancing himself from the building. Anger coursed through him, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts, many of which he struggled to recall later. He felt devastated, shattered, adrift, as if his once perfect life had crumbled in mere moments on what should have been a glorious day. Upon his return to work, his boss sensed his distress, but Hollis rebuffed any attempts at discussion. All he would offer was, "I've come to realize that things aren't always as they seem, or as we believe them to be. Today I discovered I was mistaken about something I thought I knew. Now I have to reassess my entire perspective on life." Hollis snapped out of his thoughts about the past week and kept his eyes on his unfaithful wife and former best friend, now entwined in the waves, betraying him. Tears welled in his eyes as he heard Tiffany's gleeful cries and Tim's hearty laughter. He observed, strategized, then abandoned his plans only to form new ones. Amidst his contemplation, he surveyed the house and yard, realizing he'd missed this place profoundly, perhaps even more than he'd missed Timothy, and almost as much as he'd missed Tiffany. Thankfully, their loss would only be the rental. He found solace in the fact that they hadn't saved enough for a down payment and opted for a lease-to-own agreement. Hollis was still mulling over his thoughts when a radiant Tiffany dashed back into the yard, hand in hand with Tim, pulling him along. She giggled and flirted, qualities that had initially attracted Hollis to her years ago. He adored her lively demeanor, her unwavering good humor, and affectionate nature. However, he now realized he should have questioned her loyalty when she continued to exhibit these traits with others. Even after they got engaged and married, he had convinced himself it was inconsequential, simply part of her character. Now he understood it wasn't just her character, or perhaps it was. She had betrayed him and was unfaithful. As Tiffany approached Hollis, she paused, catching her breath from earlier exertion. It was only then that she released Tim's hand. "Honey, why the long face?" she asked, her voice warm despite her panting. "It's such a lovely day, and we're all here together. What's got you feeling so low?" Leaning in, she planted a swift kiss on his lips, which he half dodged. "Oh, just work stuff, Tiff." Thinking about last week's issues, he replied, trying to brush off his concerns. "I'll sort it out soon enough. But what's got you in such a good mood?" Tiffany's smile faltered slightly as she glanced at Tim before answering. Hollis couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more than friendship in that look. Though he knew it was the same look she always gave Tim, this time he sensed a deeper meaning. "Well, we've had a great time swimming, and now we're looking forward to a nice meal and some quiet time together," she said. "What culinary masterpiece do you have planned for us tonight?" "Oh, am I once again the chosen cook for the group today? It seems like I often find myself in that role. I end up cooking even when we gather at Tim's place. Doesn't quite sit well with me, does it? Oh well, it doesn't really matter. I must admit I hadn't given it much thought because I've been preoccupied with my own issues. I suppose you and Tim will need to figure something out, or perhaps we can just throw together some sandwiches." "Oh, Hollis, how could you? You always prepare such wonderful meals when we gather. It's part of the weekend fun, watching you cook us a delicious meal, and then enjoying it as the sun sets. I can't believe you just sat there and let the meal slip away. Now what are we going to do?" Her eyes lit up as she grabbed Tim's hand and turned to Hollis, saying, "I've got an idea. You can chill some wine and set the table, and Tim can take me for a spin in his Shelby. We'll grab some teacoot and dine out here on the patio. I've heard about a fantastic new restaurant downtown, and this seems like the perfect opportunity to try it." Tiffany hurried into their bedroom and swiftly changed into a sundress and sandals. Upon returning to the patio, she grinned and exclaimed, "Come on, Tim, let's get going." Taking his hand, she led Tim towards the front door where the cars were parked. Her eyes sparkled as she turned to Hollis and remarked, "We'll probably be gone for about an hour and a half, honey. They need time to prepare the food once we arrive. I'll give you a call when we start heading back." Hollis stood in astonishment as he watched the front door close. He heard the Shelby engine roar to life, followed by the squeal of tires as Tim accelerated. He couldn't believe what had just transpired. Similar occurrences had happened before, but this felt more obvious, or maybe he was just seeing it from a new perspective. Many times after Tim and Tiff playfully wrestled, one of them would find a reason for them to run an errand together. Until now, Hollis hadn't given it much thought. They had been doing such things since middle school. Sometimes he and Tiff would even leave Tim behind back then. Of course, they had never, or almost never, been close, unlike what Hollis now suspected Typhoid and Tim were doing. Now that they were married, they didn't need to sneak off if they felt the urge. They simply excused themselves and went to the bedroom, or waited until Tim was gone and went to bed. Hollis sighed as he returned to the patio and settled back into his chair, bringing his glass and bottle of Balvenie with him. He didn't bother to chill the wine or prepare the table with plates and silverware. He remained stationary even after an hour and a half passed, despite Tiffany's giggling call announcing their imminent return. When the couple finally arrived nearly 2 hours later, he was still seated, having only risen to urinate in the yard, with his sole activity during their absence being drinking. Tiffany's laughter filled the air as she and Tim entered the house, their noisy footsteps echoing through the rooms as they made their way to the kitchen. When Tiffany stepped out onto the patio, her chatter ceased abruptly, mirroring her sudden halt. Observing the untouched table, Tiffany turned to Hollis with a mix of surprise and frustration. "Hollis, what on earth have you been up to? I thought you were going to chill the wine and set the table while we were out. It doesn't seem like you've budged an inch since we left. What's going on with you today? Hurry up and get the table ready so we can eat. We're starving." Hollis gazed at Tiffany with a mixture of sadness and restraint, refraining from any verbal response. Her disheveled appearance spoke volumes. Her tousled hair, swollen lips, and evident lack of a bra beneath her thin top hinted at a recent intimate encounter. He was certain she had been wearing one when they left. However, when they went to get a takeaway, her usually polite behavior was replaced by one that suggested recent violent activity, or to be more precise, treason. Tiffany paid no heed to Hollis's somber expression. Instead, she continued to chastise him for not being prepared to eat upon their return. Meanwhile, as she directed her frustration towards Hollis, Tim silently placed the meal on the table, avoiding eye contact. Hollis surveyed them both before silently rising and retreating to the kitchen. Upon his return, he only carried his own plate and utensils, swiftly serving himself before Tiffany stormed back into the house to retrieve plates and cutlery for herself and Tim. Once more, she criticized him for failing to set the table for all of them. Hollis glanced up at her and replied, "Listen, I'm exhausted and starving. You both managed to fetch your own place settings from the kitchen. It wouldn't be too much trouble for you to bring out your own utensils and plates. That's why I let you do it." He returned his attention to his meal. After loading up his plate, Tim sat opposite Hollis and took a few bites before expressing, "Man, this situation is totally unfair. Why are you being so harsh on us? You didn't even cook, and now you're acting all self-righteous after we went out to get some decent food, and you won't even help serve it. This isn't like you at all. Man, we're friends. You need to support me here. Lending a hand, you know? Your partner is really great, and your lack of assistance is pretty disrespectful, you know." Hollis glanced up at Tim, feeling a surge of anger. He then shifted his gaze to Tiffany, who looked guilty, before returning his attention to Tim. Tiffany avoided eye contact, focusing on her plate, attempting to ignore the tension between the two men. Hollis addressed Tim, saying, "You know, Tim, I fail to see why my actions in my own home concern you, dude. I understand you're accustomed to me footing the bill and taking care of everything when we're together, but things are going to change. I plan to enjoy my weekends just like you and Tiff do. That means I'm no longer going to be your personal assistant. It's time for you to start carrying your own weight around here, dude." Tiffany let out a surprised gasp and glanced up at Hollis. Hollis met his wife's gaze and remarked, "What's the matter? Is there an issue, dear?" "Well, it's just, you know, Tim doesn't earn enough to cover his share when we hang out together. He barely manages his car payments and rent. We've always supported each other. Why change things now? Let me think. We're all adults here, right? We all work and are responsible for ourselves and our choices. Isn't that so?" Tiff whispered, "Yes, exactly. So if we're together, we should support each other. But when we're apart, we should handle our own expenses. Typically, guests offer to help in a home, but they're not obligated to or expected to provide food for the host. I've noticed that whenever we gather, you and Tim enjoy yourselves while I handle the cooking, serving, and cleanup, and I'm also expected to foot the bill for the groceries. This doesn't feel like an equal partnership to me, and I'm tired of the imbalance and unfairness." It goes without saying that the evening turned into a series of bitterness, accusations, and offended emotions. Hollis wasn't ready to tell the other two why he took a firm stand in their friendship relationship, but they sensed his chagrin. Over the next 2 weeks, he devoted as much time as possible to watching Tiffany and Timothy. Every week, he repeatedly witnessed their infidelities, twice during 1 week and 3 times during the next. He even managed to capture their meetings during working hours. According to his observations, Tiffany and Timothy seemed to spend more time in a relationship with each other than Hollis and Tiffany before he found out about their affair. It turned out that Tiffany was paying more attention to Timothy than Hollis. During the second week on Friday, Hollis entered the owner's office and proposed, "Sir, I've been analyzing some figures during my free time over the past week. I believe we have the potential to significantly boost profits by shutting down the store and beach rental unit and letting Tim go." Mr. Tompkins shot Hollis a pointed look and frowned before responding. "I thought Tim was your friend, Hollis. Why are you suggesting we shut down his store and terminate his employment? There are occasions when we could benefit from an extra hand here at the rental center. Wouldn't hiring another employee be a preferable option to simply closing down the other store and letting your friend go? In certain circumstances, I believe that might be a more favorable decision, but in this particular situation it would be counterproductive, sir," Hollis said, leaning forward as he handed Mr. Tompkins a copy of his figures before proceeding with his argument. "I have several rationales for my recommendation, sir. Firstly, the store itself. During peak tourist months, it thrives and contributes significantly to our profits. But in the off-season, it barely covers its operating expenses. If we limit its operation from mid-April to mid-September, we would capture 89% of its annual profits. My suggestion is either to lease or sell the building and lot. Alternatively, if that's not feasible, I propose operating the store only during the April to September period. I've provided figures for each scenario. Selling or leasing the building would allow us to allocate part of the lot for a seasonal mobile store, significantly boosting profits when factoring in lease incoming. Furthermore, selling the building would bolster our bottom line, enabling us to invest in other equipment for rental purposes or increasing interest income. Lastly, I believe retaining Tim's employment would negatively impact the business due to his personal circumstances and work habits." Hollis leaned over and pushed the envelope across the table to Mr. Tompkins before continuing the conversation. He stated, "I found that several times Tim closed the store during business hours to meet his needs with a woman in the warehouse. As a result, he is, in fact, stealing from the company, continuing to receive his salary for these periods. Over the past 2 weeks, I have recorded 7 similar incidents when the store was closed for almost an hour in the late afternoon. These closures took place outside of their scheduled lunch break. These unauthorized closures have had a negative impact on the business due to potential lost sales and rentals that remain unknown. Furthermore, I cannot continue to work with him. Sir, I'm not issuing an ultimatum, but if he remains employed, I will seek employment elsewhere." "What? I can't believe you'd say that. You, Tim, and Tiffany have been friends. No, more than friends for most of your lives." "Yeah, I guess we were, at least on the surface. I've recently realized things aren't as I thought. Tim isn't truly my friend, and Tiffany won't be my wife much longer. The contents of this envelope explain why I'm saying these things, sir." Mr. Tompkins frowned and opened the envelope after giving Hollis a hard look. When he saw the first picture, he sharply inhaled. He quickly glanced at the other pictures, then looked up at Hollis. "Son, I'm at a loss for words. I understand your reluctance to work with Tim, and I even understand your doubts about Tiffany remaining your wife for much longer. What perplexes me, though, is your decision to shut down the beach rental business. I can't help but wonder if it's a wise business move or simply an act of retaliation." Hollis met his boss's gaze and sighed before responding. "Well, sir, I was afraid you might see it that way. I won't deny that what happened between Tiff and Tim influenced my decisions, but I believe any accountant would support my recommendation. I propose we have our accounting firm review my calculations, but I'm confident they align with the best interests of the business. According to my analysis, the store only yields marginal profits annually, and the capital tied up in it could be more effectively utilized elsewhere." The accounting firm supporting Hollis's evaluation of the beachfront property actually presented even more severe figures than Hollis did. When all factors were considered, the business's ongoing operations resulted in a net loss due to Hollis' oversight of depreciation and insurance in his calculations. With the store closed and Tim terminated, Hollis took action on the day of his dismissal by instructing his attorney to serve divorce papers to Tiffany. He spent the morning relocating from their rented house to a nearby apartment, conveniently close to his workplace. Despite being back at work in the store, he reluctantly answered a call from Tiffany, feeling the need to address the impending conversation. He felt a knot in his stomach as he greeted Tiffany. "Hey, Tiffany, what's up?" Anticipating her to launch into a tirade about the divorce, he was surprised when she instead questioned, "Were you aware of what's happening? Why didn't you inform us that Brad, Mr. Tompkins, was going to shut down the beachfront store and let go of Tim? I thought we were all close. How could you allow this? Couldn't you have persuaded him to relocate Tim to your workplace? Tim was already struggling with rent and car payments before, and now he's left with nothing. I've offered him to stay with us until he gets back on his feet. Can you leave work early and assist him with moving?" "No, I don't think so. Mr. Tompkins and I have visited the store several times during operating hours only to find it closed. Tim was nowhere in sight. The store was barely breaking even, so he made the decision to close it. As for helping Tim move, that's out of the question. I have to leave now." Around 30 minutes later, Tiffany called again. This time, Hollis picked up the phone reluctantly, regretting it immediately. As soon as Tiffany heard his voice, she erupted into screams. "Hollis, how could you? Did you get Tim fired? And now you're divorcing me. How could you do this? We've been together for so long, and suddenly you're just cutting us out of your life. Just like that? Well, Tiff, how could you betray me? How could you be with Tim and not expect me to leave both him and you? What made you think that? Maybe because I have photos of you and Tim together? Maybe because I saw you kissing him and letting him touch you? Maybe that's why I thought you were cheating on me. Hollis, I've never slept with anyone, not once. Then what did you do when Tim was with you? Wasn't that what I think it was and what the evidence shows? Well, I guess that's one way to see it, but I'd rather believe we were expressing our love just as you and I do." "Oh, Hollis, how could you? Hollis, I thought you understood. It's always been just us, the three of us. We've always been together. You know that. You've known since grade school that I've loved you both deeply. You've both confessed your love for us, to me and to each other. You've always known that Tim and I share something special, just like you and I do. You're not seriously considering divorcing me because of Tim, are you? I love you. I love Tim too. I've always known I would be married to you. Time is essential for our happiness, and we are essential for his. If you loved Tim enough to be intimate with him, why did you marry me? Well, you were more stable. You can provide better support for the children when we have them. Tim can't even afford his own expenses, but he's special. The three of us make a great team and will be wonderful with the children when they come. Tim can impart life lessons and love for life to them. I can nurture and care for them, and you can instill in them responsibility and a strong work ethic. Don't you see? What we have creates a perfect unit. When Tim falls short financially, you can cover it, and we all live better, just like we do now." "No, Tiffany, I don't see. I guess I never truly saw what was really happening. Goodbye, Tiffany." Hollis slammed the phone down and stood there, seething. He was so angry he was trembling, his face flushed red. She had practically admitted to having been involved with both of them all along, even using their joint income to help pay Tim's bills. Damn. How could he have been so mistaken, so oblivious? No wonder Tiffany immediately offered Tim to move in with her after their divorce. However, Tim still had difficulty paying for the car. 2 months later, he walked into the store late at night. Hollis, intending to kick him out, approached him at the door. Before Hollis could speak, Tim pleaded, "Hey, you have to help me, man. They're threatening to take my car away from me. I can't let that happen. Tiff paid last month, but now we're broke. Can you lend me some cash, dude?" "What? You're sleeping with my wife, proving that you've never been my friend, and now you have the nerve to come here and ask for money for your car? Get out of here, quickly." "Hey, dude, what kind of hostility? Yes, I slept with your wife, but you also slept with mine. It was like she was with both of us, you know? We decided you didn't mind, but now the situation has changed. We've always been friends and had each other's backs. I really need your help right now, man. We can discuss all these issues later. Hollis smiled and suggested, maybe I can assist you with this, Tim. Let me finish my shift, and then we can head to your bank and sort this out. Upon arriving at the bank where Tim's car loan was held, they requested to speak with a loan officer. Once seated, Hollis explained the situation, saying, I understand you have the loan for Tim Redding's Mustang. He's fallen behind, and you're considering repossession. I'm willing to take over the payments to prevent that. Would that be acceptable? The loan officer hesitated, prompting Tim to interject. Hold up. I never said I was giving up my car, man. I just need a loan to cover the payments. Let me clarify, Tim. I am simply transferring the loan and car into my name so I can manage the payments and resolve this matter. I'll take care of the bills and you won't have to worry about credit issues. Tim relaxed and agreed, saying, additionally, I can handle the paperwork for the new title request to be submitted to the state. Let me fill out a few forms and gather some signatures, and we'll sort everything out. With that, she swiftly headed to a storage room for the necessary documents. After she left, Tim sat up and turned to Hollis, asking, What's up with changing the title to your name, man? I can't afford to lose my ride. Relax, Tim. Since I'm taking over the payments for you, it's necessary to transfer the title to my name to ensure everything's legal. You know how the banks and government are. It's their rules or nothing. About 45 minutes later, Tim transferred ownership of his car to Hollis, who settled the overdue amount. As they got into Hollis' truck, Tim reverted to his usual self. Hollis struggled to contain his frustration. Upon returning to the store, Tim eagerly hopped out of the truck and rushed to the driver's side. Grinning, he suggested, Hey, I got a great plant yesterday. Let's smoke a couple of sunflowers and celebrate. I have a stash in the car. I can't do that right now, Tim. I need to finish sorting out the paperwork for your car. Okay, cool. I thought we were done with that. Hurry up so I don't lose it, man. Catch you later, dude. Tim lit a sunflower before driving out of the parking lot. Hollis followed suit, then diverted to the DMV to complete the title transfer for Tim's car. Hollis was elated with his successful deception, almost dancing as he swiftly completed the transaction, paid the fees, and left the building with a smile. 2 weeks later, Hollis received the final divorce papers in the mail. The divorce process was relatively painless. Both Tiffany and he earned nearly the same amount, so there was no spousal support involved, and their savings were minimal. They each retained their own vehicles and personal belongings without any hassle. Hollis removed his name from the lease of the beloved small beachfront house they once shared, freeing himself from Tiffany. However, he couldn't help but miss that house, as well as the companionship. Late on Saturday night, or rather early Sunday morning after receiving the decree, Hollis rode one of the rental beach bikes to his former residence. He cautiously unlocked the door, relieved that Tiffany hadn't changed the locks or asked for the key back. As he quietly entered the house, he noticed the keys to the Mustang lying on the table, just as he expected. Hastily he picked them up, but then curiosity struck him. He wondered where the spare set of keys might be. Checking the cabinet where Tiffany always kept her purse, he struck gold. There was a Mustang key fob attached to her keychain. He didn't hesitate to take it before leaving the house as silently as he had entered. Hollis approached the Mustang parked in the driveway and opened the door. The tricky part was about to begin. He needed to move it without attracting attention. Starting and driving this car was always a noisy affair. He winced as the engine roared to life, though he couldn't deny it sounded fantastic. Silently, he reversed out of the driveway and drove down the street toward his house. He planned to return with his truck later to retrieve the motorcycle he had ridden, anticipating some excitement. After lunch on Sunday, Hollis received a frantic call from Tim. He spoke so rapidly that Hollis struggled to follow. Hollis, man, it's awful. Someone stole my ride, man. I need your help, dude. What am I gonna do? Relax, Tim. Take it easy. There's nothing I can do. Hollis replied calmly before hanging up, sitting back in his chair with a satisfied grin. By now, Tim had secured a part-time job with a pool company. Over the following week, Hollis made a habit of driving past the company's address around the time Tim finished work. Finally, on Thursday, he caught Tim getting into Tiffany's car after work. Hollis smirked to himself and honked the horn as he drove past the couple. Despite the engine's noise, he could still hear Tim's angry shout. Hollis accelerated away before Tiff could react. The next Saturday morning, Hollis was polishing the Shelby when a city patrol car pulled into the parking lot behind him. An officer approached and asked, "Are you Hollis Thomas?" "Yes, officer, that's me." "Is something wrong?" "Is this your vehicle, sir?" "Yes, it is." Hollis chuckled, adding, "Well, sort of." The officer tensed and regarded Hollis as he continued, "Technically, it's mine and the bank's. Could I see your registration and proof of insurance, please, sir?" "Of course. Please wait a moment." Hollis opened the door, searched through the glove compartment, and retrieved the requested documents. Handing them over to the patrolman, he inquired again, "Any issues, officer?" "Just need a moment, sir." The officer returned to his patrol car and proceeded to check the information. After a few minutes, he returned the paperwork to Hollis, explaining, "We received a report from a Mr. Timothy Reading stating his vehicle was stolen. The vehicle identification number he provided matches this one. He mentioned seeing you driving it and requested its recovery. However, your registration and DMV records confirm ownership. Could you clarify this matter, sir?" Hollis grinned and rested against the car in the shade. He explained, "Mr. Reading was the previous owner of this vehicle but couldn't keep up with the payments. I agreed to take over the payments to ensure his credit remained intact. We visited the bank where I assumed his loan and gained ownership of the vehicle. Frankly, I'm not sure what his issue is, but I suspect he may have been under the influence either when we made the agreement or when he reported to you, sir. We used to be close friends, but after my divorce from my wife, he sided with her, and our relationship isn't as strong as it once was. However, I did allow him to continue using the vehicle for 2 weeks before retrieving it from his residence. I believe that was a sufficient amount of time for him to make alternate transportation arrangements. I understand. So you're suggesting that he might be using illegal substances and trying to involve the police because of your divorce?" "No, sir. I can't speak to his feelings about our divorce, nor do I particularly care. I just wanted to say that illegal substances could possibly explain his forgetfulness about selling a car." "Understood, sir. I apologize for any inconvenience." On Sunday afternoon, Hollis lounged by the pool when Tiffany and Tim abruptly appeared. They swiftly overturned his chair, sending him tumbling onto the scorching concrete. Tim demanded, "Why'd you take my car, man?" "I need it back." "Give me the keys." Hollis responded, "You sought my help, remember? I helped you out of our past friendship and a hint of guilt for your troubles. You transferred the car to me to prevent repossession. Now I've got a sleek ride, though not an F-154 X4. It's quite the attention grabber, you know. Seems like a fair trade-off. We both still have nice cars, just different ones. I even got a Mustang for my wife. I'd say I got the better end of the bargain. At least my car won't betray me and run off with someone else without my consent." Tiffany let out a piercing cry before falling silent, tears streaming down her face. Tim glanced at Hollis briefly, remarking, "That's really harsh, man." Hollis met their gaze and replied, "That's just how it is. Now leave before I involve the authorities. I don't want either of you around here anymore." Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.